Imagine you're in a courtroom where the stakes are high and every word matters. The prosecutor has laid out a case based on solid evidence, clear, logical, and precise. Then the defense attorney steps forward. Instead of focusing on the evidence, they share a story, a heart-wrenching tale of the defendant's difficult past, their struggles, and the immense challenges they've faced. The jury, moved by this narrative, begins to feel sympathy, even pity. The facts seem to blur as emotions take center stage. This is the power of the appeal to pity fallacy. When we talk about arguments in this context, we aren't referring to a heated exchange between people, but to a reasoned series of statements aimed at persuading someone of something. These statements consist of premises that lead to a conclusion, and the strength of an argument relies on the soundness and relevance of its premises. However, not all arguments are made equally. Some are constructed on flawed reasoning or deceptive tactics designed to mislead rather than inform. These flaws in reasoning are known as fallacies. A fallacy is an error in reasoning that weakens an argument. It's not just a simple mistake, but a deceptive or misleading kind of reasoning that may seem convincing on the surface but doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Fallacies often exploit our emotions, our cognitive biases, or our lack of information, leading us to accept conclusions that aren't logically sound. One such fallacy is the appeal to pity, known in Latin as argumentum ad misericordiam. The term appeal to pity refers to the attempt to win an argument by exploiting the audience's sympathy, compassion, or pity, rather than by presenting relevant evidence or logical reasoning. The phrase argumentum ad misericordiam breaks down into three parts. Argumentum, meaning argument. Ad, which means to or toward. And misericordiam, which translates to pity or compassion. When combined, the term refers to an argument that directs the audience's attention toward feelings of pity, rather than the logical structure or validity of the argument itself. Instead of focusing on evidence or logical reasoning, the appeal to pity fallacy attempts to persuade by invoking feelings of compassion or sympathy. This type of fallacy is particularly insidious because it exploits one of the most human traits, our empathy. When someone appeals to our sense of pity, they are attempting to bypass our rational defenses and speak directly to our emotions. This can be a powerful and effective strategy, but it often leads to decisions that are based more on emotion than on logic or evidence. Consider a situation where a student approaches a teacher at the end of the semester, asking for a higher grade. Instead of presenting a case based on the quality of their work or demonstrating improvement over the course of the semester, the student focuses on how a low grade would devastate them, harm their future, or disappoint their family. The student's plea might evoke feelings of sympathy or pity in the teacher, but it doesn't change the fact that the grade reflects the student's academic performance, not their personal hardships. This is a classic example of the appeal to pity fallacy in action. Another common example can be found in advertising. Many advertisements, especially those for charities or social causes, rely heavily on emotional appeals to persuade viewers to donate money or support a cause. Think of the commercials that show images of starving children or animals in distress, accompanied by somber music and a voiceover urging you to help. These ads are designed to evoke strong feelings of pity or guilt, prompting you to act out of compassion rather than logic. While the cause may be noble, the tactic relies heavily on manipulating the viewer's emotions rather than providing a logical reason to support the cause. The appeal to pity fallacy can also be seen in political discourse. Candidates often share personal stories of hardship or tragedy to connect with voters on an emotional level. While these stories can be powerful and moving, they can also serve as a distraction from more substantive discussions about the candidate's policies, qualifications, or actions. By focusing on their personal struggles, candidates can avoid difficult questions about their record or positions on important issues, effectively steering the conversation away from areas where they may be weaker. This isn't to say that emotions have no place in public discourse. Empathy and compassion are important aspects of the human experience, and they can play a valuable role in motivating us to take action on important issues. However, when emotions are used to cloud judgment or manipulate decisions, they can lead to flawed conclusions. The challenge is to recognize when an appeal to pity is being used in this way and to resist the urge to let emotions override reason. The appeal to pity fallacy works because it taps into our natural inclination to feel empathy for others. As human beings, we are wired to respond to stories and images that evoke strong emotions. When we hear about someone suffering, our natural instinct is to want to help or alleviate their pain. This instinct is a beautiful aspect of human nature, but it also makes us vulnerable to manipulation. Neurological studies have shown that when we encounter emotionally charged stories, certain areas of our brain, like the amygdala, become highly active. This can cloud our ability to think critically, making us more likely to be swayed by an emotional appeal, even when the argument itself lacks logical merit. The amygdala is part of the brain's limbic system, which is involved in processing emotions. When it is activated, it can influence our decision-making process, leading us to prioritize emotional responses over logical reasoning. This is particularly concerning in situations where important decisions need to be made, whether it's in a court of law, a political election, or even personal relationships. When emotions are allowed to dominate, they can lead to decisions that are based on feelings rather than facts, with potentially serious consequences. The appeal to pity fallacy preys on this vulnerability, encouraging us to make decisions based on sympathy or compassion rather than evidence or logic. To understand the true impact of the appeal to pity fallacy, let's delve into a historical case study: the infamous Sacco and Vanzetti trial in the 1920s. Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti, two Italian immigrants, were accused of robbery and murder. The case became a flashpoint for debates over immigration, anarchism, and civil liberties. However, what truly swayed public opinion were the emotional appeals made on behalf of the defendants. Their supporters highlighted their status as poor, working-class immigrants who were targeted due to their political beliefs. The focus on their plight and the harshness of their treatment diverted attention from the actual evidence against them. Although they were ultimately executed, the appeal to pity played a significant role in the public's perception of the case, and has continued to fuel debates about their guilt and the fairness of the trial. This case illustrates the danger of allowing emotions to overshadow evidence. While Sacco and Vanzetti may indeed have been victims of prejudice, the focus on their suffering and the injustice they faced created a narrative that was difficult to disentangle from the facts of the case. It's a prime example of how the appeal to pity fallacy can muddy the waters, making it challenging to arrive at a clear, objective conclusion. In modern times, the appeal to pity fallacy continues to be a powerful tool in media and advertising. Companies often use emotionally charged images and stories to sell products or promote causes. Think of the commercials for animal shelters that show abused and neglected animals with sad music playing in the background, urging viewers to donate. While the cause may be noble, the tactic relies heavily on manipulating the viewer's emotions to achieve its goal, often without providing clear information on how the donations will be used or addressing the broader issues of animal welfare. The political sphere is another arena where this fallacy is frequently employed. Candidates often share personal stories of hardship or loss, using these narratives to connect with voters on an emotional level. While these stories can be powerful and moving, they can also serve as a distraction from more substantive discussions about policy and leadership. By focusing on their personal struggles, candidates can sidestep difficult questions about their qualifications or political positions, effectively steering the conversation away from areas where they may be weaker. This isn't to say that personal stories and emotions have no place in public discourse. They can humanize complex issues, bring attention to important causes, and foster a sense of connection and empathy. However, when they are used to obscure facts, avoid accountability, or manipulate decisions, they become a form of deception. The challenge is to recognize when an appeal to pity is being used in this way and to resist the urge to let emotions override reason. So, how can we protect ourselves from falling prey to the appeal to pity fallacy? The first step is awareness. Understanding that this fallacy exists and recognizing when it's being used is crucial. Once you're aware of the tactic, you can take a step back and ask yourself whether the emotional appeal is relevant to the argument at hand. Is the focus on the individual's suffering distracting you from more important considerations? Are you being asked to make a decision based on sympathy rather than evidence? Another strategy is to focus on the facts. When faced with an emotional appeal, try to separate the emotional narrative from the factual information. What is the evidence? What are the logical arguments being made? Are there other factors that should be considered? By focusing on the facts, you can ensure that your decisions are based on reason rather than emotion. Critical thinking skills are also essential in combating the appeal to pity fallacy. Question the motives behind the emotional appeal. Why is this story being told? What is the speaker or writer trying to achieve? Are there alternative perspectives that should be considered? By asking these questions, you can begin to see through the emotional manipulation and focus on the underlying issues. It's also helpful to seek out diverse perspectives. When confronted with an emotional appeal, look for other sources of information that might offer a different viewpoint. This can help you gain a more balanced understanding of the issue and prevent you from being swayed by a single, emotionally charged narrative. Finally, it's important to recognize the limits of empathy. While empathy is a valuable and necessary part of the human experience, it shouldn't be the sole basis for making decisions, especially in situations that require objectivity and fairness. Balancing empathy with reason is key to avoiding the pitfalls of the appeal to pity fallacy. The appeal to pity fallacy is a powerful tool that can influence our decisions in subtle and profound ways. By targeting our emotions, it can divert attention from facts, cloud our judgment, and lead us to make choices that may not be in our best interest. Whether in the courtroom, in politics, in advertising, or in our personal lives, this fallacy can have serious consequences if left unchecked. However, by being aware of this fallacy, focusing on facts, practicing critical thinking, seeking diverse perspectives, and balancing empathy with reason, we can protect ourselves from its influence. The next time you're confronted with an emotional appeal, take a moment to pause and reflect. Is this appeal leading you towards truth and justice, or is it merely pulling at your heartstrings? By asking this question, you can begin to see through the emotional fog and make decisions that are grounded in reason and reality. The appeal to pity fallacy might seem harmless on the surface. After all, what's wrong with feeling sympathy for others? But when sympathy is used as a tool for manipulation, it can lead to decisions that are not only misguided but also unjust. By understanding and recognizing this fallacy, we can ensure that our judgments are based on truth rather than emotion, and that our decisions are guided by reason rather than sentiment. This fallacy, like many others, exploits our natural human tendencies. We are emotional beings, and our emotions often guide our decisions. But when those emotions are manipulated, the consequences can be far-reaching. The appeal to pity is a reminder that while empathy is important, it must be balanced with logic and reason. In the end, it's about striving for a balance, acknowledging the power of emotions while not allowing them to dictate our decisions. It's about recognizing when an emotional appeal is being used to distract from the facts and having the courage to push through the emotion to find the truth. Because the truth, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable, is always worth pursuing. So now, imagine for a moment that you're faced with a decision that could affect someone's future in a profound way. Perhaps you're a juror in a trial, and the defendant's lawyer has just delivered a heartfelt plea for leniency. The defendant, you learn, has had a difficult life, a troubled childhood, a series of unfortunate events, and now this trial is just another chapter in their string of misfortunes. You feel your heartstrings being tugged, and you start to wonder if maybe, just maybe, you should give them the benefit of the doubt. But then you remember the evidence, the facts that have been presented over the course of the trial. The question now looms large. Should your decision be influenced more by pity or by the cold, hard facts? This scenario is not just confined to courtrooms. It happens in everyday life more often than we realize. The appeal to pity fallacy is one of the most common forms of emotional manipulation. It works because it targets our innate human empathy, a powerful force that drives us to help others, to alleviate suffering, and to make the world a kinder place. But when empathy is weaponized, when it's used to override logic and reason, It can lead to decisions that are not only irrational but also unjust. Consider the world of politics, where candidates frequently use their personal stories to connect with voters. These narratives often focus on overcoming adversity, surviving personal tragedies, or battling against the odds. While these stories can be inspiring and serve to humanize the candidate, they can also serve as a distraction from more important discussions about policy, experience, and qualifications. When voters are swayed more by a candidate's hardships than by their plans for governance, the result can be the election of leaders who may not be the best choice for the job. This is not to say that personal stories have no place in political discourse. On the contrary, they can be a powerful tool for connecting with voters and conveying a candidate's character. But when these stories are used to deflect from substantive issues or to manipulate voters' emotions, they become a form of deception, a way to gain support without addressing the real questions that should be asked of anyone seeking public office. The appeal to pity fallacy also plays a significant role in advertising and marketing. Companies often use emotional appeals to sell products, from heartwarming stories of family and togetherness to tear-jerking depictions of suffering animals or starving children. These ads are designed to bypass our rational decision-making processes and speak directly to our emotions, prompting us to buy products or donate money based on feelings rather than logic. While there's nothing inherently wrong with appealing to emotions in advertising, it becomes problematic when the emotional appeal is used to obscure important facts about the product or cause being promoted. For example, an ad for a charity might show images of starving children, urging viewers to donate money to help alleviate their suffering. The ad may evoke strong feelings of pity and compassion, leading many people to donate without questioning where the money is going or how it will be used. In some cases, the charity might be highly effective and responsible, but in others, the money might be poorly managed, with little of it actually reaching those in need. The emotional appeal in the ad has succeeded in eliciting donations, but at the cost of bypassing the viewer's critical thinking. In the realm of criminal justice, the appeal to pity fallacy is frequently used to influence sentencing and parole decisions. Defendants or their lawyers might emphasize the hardships they have faced, such as poverty, abuse, or mental illness, in an effort to garner sympathy from the judge or jury. While these factors are relevant and deserving of consideration, they should not overshadow the evidence of the crime or the need for justice. When emotions take precedence over facts, it can lead to leniency that undermines the integrity of the legal system. Similarly, in personal relationships, the appeal to pity fallacy can be used to manipulate others. A partner in a romantic relationship might use an emotional appeal to avoid taking responsibility for their actions or to gain sympathy after a disagreement. For instance, if one partner has been unfaithful, they might focus on their own feelings of guilt, shame, or remorse, appealing to the other partner's pity to avoid confrontation or consequences. While these emotions might be genuine, the appeal to pity can prevent an honest and rational discussion about the underlying issues in the relationship. The appeal to pity fallacy is also prevalent in debates about public policy. Advocates for various causes often highlight the suffering of those affected by a particular issue, appealing to the audience's compassion to gain support for their position. While raising awareness about suffering and injustice is essential, it's important that the emotional appeal is balanced with a factual and logical argument. Otherwise, the debate risks being driven more by emotion than by reason, leading to policy decisions that may not be in the best interest of society as a whole. For example, in discussions about healthcare reform, proponents of a particular policy might focus on the hardships faced by those without access to medical care, appealing to the public's sense of pity. While the suffering is real and deserving of attention, the emotional appeal can overshadow important considerations, such as the cost of the proposed reforms, the potential for unintended consequences, or the need for a balanced approach to healthcare that addresses both access and quality. The same can be said for debates about immigration policy. Advocates on both sides of the issue often use emotional appeals to sway public opinion, highlighting the suffering of immigrants or the challenges faced by citizens in areas with high levels of immigration. While these emotional appeals can be powerful, they can also serve to polarize the debate, making it more difficult to reach a consensus based on a reasoned analysis of the facts. So how do we guard against the appeal to pity fallacy? The first step is to recognize it when it occurs. Being aware of this fallacy and understanding how it works can help us to take a step back and evaluate the argument more objectively. When you encounter an emotional appeal, ask yourself, is this argument based on facts and logic, or is it trying to manipulate my emotions? What is the evidence for the claims being made? Are there other factors that should be considered? Another important step is to develop strong critical thinking skills. This involves not only questioning the motives behind an emotional appeal, but also seeking out additional information and perspectives. Don't rely solely on the emotional narrative presented to you. Look for other sources of information that might offer a different viewpoint or provide more context. This can help you to see through the emotional manipulation and make a more informed decision. It's also important to recognize the limits of empathy. While empathy is a valuable and necessary part of the human experience, it should not be the sole basis for making decisions, especially in situations that require objectivity and fairness. Balancing empathy with reason is key to avoiding the pitfalls of the appeal to pity fallacy. Finally, it's essential to be mindful of our own biases and emotions. We all have a natural tendency to be swayed by emotional appeals, especially when they align with our existing beliefs or values. By being aware of this tendency and making a conscious effort to focus on the facts, we can better protect ourselves from being manipulated by the appeal to pity fallacy. In conclusion, the appeal to pity fallacy is a powerful tool that can influence our decisions in subtle and profound ways. By targeting our emotions, it can divert attention from facts, cloud our judgment, and lead us to make choices that may not be in our best interest. Whether in the courtroom, in politics, in advertising, or in our personal lives, this fallacy can have serious consequences if left unchecked. However, by being aware of this fallacy, focusing on facts, practicing critical thinking, seeking diverse perspectives, and balancing empathy with reason, we can protect ourselves from its influence. The next time you're confronted with an emotional appeal, take a moment to pause and reflect. Is this appeal leading you towards truth and justice, or is it merely pulling at your heartstrings? By asking this question, you can begin to see through the emotional fog and make decisions that are grounded in reason and reality. The appeal to pity fallacy might seem harmless on the surface. After all, what's wrong with feeling sympathy for others? But when sympathy is used as a tool for manipulation, it can lead to decisions that are not only misguided but also unjust. By understanding and recognizing this fallacy, we can ensure that our judgments are based on truth rather than emotion, and that our decisions are guided by reason rather than sentiment. In the end, it's about striving for a balance, acknowledging the power of emotions while not allowing them to dictate our decisions. It's about recognizing when an emotional appeal is being used to distract from the facts and having the courage to push through the emotion to find the truth. Because the truth, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable, is always worth pursuing.